So we have our starting pose and our contact pose. So the question at hand is, which pose should we do next? And if we look at our list here, we keep saying the poses in order: contact down, passing up, contact down, passing up. So a lot of people will think the next pose we should do is the down pose. But remember, we're doing pose to pose animation. And there's nothing that says we have to do this pose next. If I'm doing a really complex animation of a character climbing a tree, I may want to have the character start on the ground for my first pose, and then my last pose be the character at the top of the tree, and do those two poses first. That way I can work out how the character gets up the tree with the other poses. So that's what I'm going to do here. Instead of making the down pose next, I'm going to make the other contact poses. So as we saw in this illustration, the other contact poses are this pose, which is kind of a mirror of our first pose, and then this pose, which is the exact same pose as our first contact pose. The only difference is it's this pose after the character has moved forward 2 steps. Right? And so we have to come up with a way to put the character in the right place for that. Now, this is kind of a sloppy system for doing it, but it will work. So I'm going to hide this. And really what we need to be able to do is, we'll go out here, let's say, let's make it about frame 50. Let's do frame 45. And this is where we need our second contact pose to be. And if I hit S on that, then I have that contact pose again. It's just in the wrong place, right? We need it to be somewhere over here, but I don't necessarily know exactly where. And it would be great if I could know exactly where, but I can kind of come up with a system to let me know approximately where. And I usually just do this by figuring out a distance, right? And just to show this clearly, I will use a box. So if I create a box, I'm going to scale this box forward the length of my character's stride, right? So let's do something like the tip of this toe. Maybe we'll do more like the end of this heel to the end of this heel, right? Now, if I hold down D, or tap D, and then hold down V, I can snap my pivot point to the end of this, and then when I scale it, I can scale it to be the length of that stride, right? And I'm going heel to heel because the next step, I need to know where the end of this heel, or where the end of this heel will be after the character steps forward. So I'm going to go to my, I guess it's my right view. Let's do left view. And look at this to make sure I'm kind of getting it in there correctly. We could even turn on our grid if we wanted to be able to see it, but I think we're getting pretty close. And I want this to land about the same spot as the end of our heel does right here. So that's roughly the length heel to heel of our stride. So now that I have one of those, I can hit Control D to duplicate that, and I can move this forward to the end of this. So I can move it regularly. If I wanted to snap to it though, I could go back to my perspective view and hold down V and snap to the corner of that box. Right, so now we have this perfect step. What this is going to show us now is if the character took one step forward, we would see exactly, we could line up exactly where our character's heel should be with the end of that box, right? But really, we need our character to take 2 steps forward. So I need one more of these boxes. Control D, I can hold down V and move this out to the end. And so this is the stride that I need my character to be at. Like, this is where I need, if I were to kind of move these out of the way just so we can see, right? This point is where I need my characters. Actually, I'm going to hit Control H just to hide them temporarily. This is where I'll need my character's back heel to be, and this is where I'll need my character's front heel to be. So if I grab these controls, I can slide my character forward just by moving it. Now, you want to be careful because there's different ways in which you can move an object. And right now I have mine moving in the world axis. You can tell which one's yours is in by holding down W and then clicking. And you'll see mine is set to world. If yours is set to object, we're going to get some weirder results when we try to move it. But if I hold down W and set it to world, then I can just slide it forward in this axis and line up my pose on frame 45 with this reference box. So again, go to my left view, and I can go here and sort of line up my heels with that box. Now, it's not 100% precise, but it's a good way to get pretty close. Again, my custom tab, select everything and hit S. And at this point, I can sort of hide these reference cubes if I want to, because I don't really need them anymore. Now, that's how I get my second contact pose. So we have our contact pose here, and then this pose has to be exactly the same pose. You can't just eyeball this. And that's because I'm going to show you a trick on how to make the other 4 steps later in this video. So we got contact, contact. Again, don't worry about this weird stuff happening in the middle. But what we're going to do next is we're going to make our other contact. Now we can kind of use those boxes again. I'll probably go ahead and bring up box. Let's just go ahead and unhide them again. So Shift H, right? So this is about where I need my other contact to be, but I need the legs to be reversed, right? I need this leg to be further back. So I can move this one in on this axis just so we can see it a little bit better. Move this one out, kind of hide those two again. Go to my left view, and I'm going to kind of make my character adhere closer to this pose. Right? So the character's foot should probably be right about here. I feel like that step is just happening a little too big. Right? So we need that heel to be hitting there. We need this one to be pushing off right about there. So we're pretty close. But this actually needs to be the other way around, right? This is the foot that needs to be in the front. So I'm going to slide this one forward. And just in my perspective view, I can kind of bounce back and forth. In fact, it may be easier to have 2 layouts side by side. I can have this one be my left view. Right, and then this one be my perspective view. So now I can sort of tumble around and get an idea of this pose. Let's go ahead and 0 that in this direction just so I can see where the, so I need to go ahead and take away this information on frame 30. And I need to create sort of my contact pose with that by rotating up on the heel. So I'm really trying to copy what I'm getting with this foot over here. Right? So I notice that he sort of rolls out. My character's weight is sort of confusing here. So I'm going to just 0 out the X, which is the side to side. And I'm going to 0 out my rotation just to kind of get my hips back to neutral. And then I'm just going to sort of swap out these feet. This one needs to be back here. Again, I can take out that rotation. I can start to roll up the ball on the heel. I also need to get it down on the ground. For some reason, it's still up in the air. Oh, I know why. And then slide this back to where that heel is lining up with the back of that box. Right? And then this heel is lining up pretty much with the front of that box. Now you're seeing I'm making the knees stretch, and that's because I had that rotation in the other walk. And so I'll just go ahead and add a similar rotation here. Right. And this allows us to get something similar. I feel like this is not exactly right. So I'll push that back a little bit and maybe even push our character up just a touch. I feel like it's a little too much rotation. That'll allow us to stretch that back out again. And then, yeah, I may have rolled up on the knees a little much. Maybe something like that. Now, once I have these two keyframes, again, select everything, because you'll see that there are things that are not keyed on these controls, and hit S. Now, the poses I have are my neutral, my contact, my other contact, and my other contact. If you were to hit play on this now, go ahead and hide this, you'll start to see what looks like a walk cycle. So we're getting there, but there's still a lot missing. One of the things I'll say is that this is one of the biggest problems that people have in this animation, or one of the biggest mistakes they make, is stopping too early. Some people who are going to look at this and they're going to be like, wow, it's moving, I'm done. That's not right. All of those other poses, the down, the passing, the up, all of those are important in making this walk look believable in terms of physics. So we will pick this up in the next video and finish up some of the other poses involved.